We know the rules, we all agree to the rules, and whoever has more runs at the end of 9 innings is the winner, and the game is over. No one ever says, if we can just play 2 more innings, I know we can come back. Doesn't work that way. The game is over, right? That's a finite game. Then you have an infinite game. Infinite games are defined as known and unknown players. The rules are changeable, and the objective is to keep the game in play, to perpetuate the game. When you pit a finite player versus a finite player, the system is stable. Baseball is stable. Right? When you pit an infinite player versus an infinite player, the system is also stable. Like the Cold War, for example, because there cannot be a winner and a loser. There are no winners and losers in an infinite game, right? It doesn't exist. Because there are no winners or losers, what ends up happening in the infinite contest is players drop out when they run out of the will or the resources to play. But there's no winners or losers. Problems arise when you pit a finite player versus an infinite player. Because a finite player is playing to win, and an infinite player is playing to keep the game going. Right? This is what happened to us in Vietnam. We were playing to win, and the Vietnamese were fighting for their lives. We were the ones who got stuck in quagmire. This is the Soviet Union and Afghanistan. They were trying to beat the Mujahideen, and the Mujahideen would fight for as long as is necessary. Quagmire. Now let's look at business. The game of business has pre-existed or has existed long before every single company that exists on this planet today. And it will outlast every single company that exists on this planet today. There's no winning the game of business. And the reason is because we haven't agreed to the rules. I get such a kick out of this. You realize how many companies actually don't know the game they're in, right? Listen to the language that the companies use. We're trying to beat our competition. We're trying to be number one. Did you know that we were ranked number one? Look at the listing. Based on what criteria? Revenues, profits, market share, square footage, number of employees, based on what time frame? A quarter, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years? I haven't agreed to those standards. How can you declare yourself the winner? How can you declare yourself number one where no one else in the game has agreed to the rules? Because it's arbitrary. There is no winning because there's no end.
So
in other words, companies are playing finite games. Listen to their language. They're trying to beat their competition. What does that even mean? It's the leaders in the companies that understand the game that they're in and organize their resources and their decision-making around the infinite contest that outlast and frustrate their competition. All the companies that we refer to as the exceptions, Southwest Airlines, Apple Computers, Harley Davidson, they're the exception. No, they're playing the infinite contest. They frustrate their competition, is what happens. That's what happens, because they're not playing to win. Jim Senegal, the founder of Costco, which is the only real company that gives Walmart a run for its money, he says public companies are looking to succeed for the quarter. He says, we're looking for the next 50 years. You can hear him. He's playing the infinite contest. I spoke at a leadership summit for Microsoft. I also spoke at a leadership summit for Apple.
They have authority.
Now, at the Microsoft summit, I would say 70% of the executives, and this was under the Steve Ballmer days, I would say about 70% of the executives spent about 70% of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple.
And that's what leadership is. It's the
At the Apple Summit,
to take care of the people
100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn.
It is a skill that can be learned.
One was obsessed with their competition. The other one was obsessed with where they're going. So at the end of my presentation at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zoom, which was the competitor to the iPod Touch when it was a thing. Right? And I have to tell you, this piece of technology was spectacular.
Don't have the ability
it was
to make
beautiful.
decisions that will impact
the user
the entire
interface was incredible. The design was amazing. It was intuitive.
The life of another human being.
It was one of the most beautiful, elegant pieces of technology I'd ever seen. Right now, it didn't work with iTunes, which is an entirely different problem. I couldn't use it.
How supported they feel if they make a mistake. Do they feel that they can turn?
But that's something else.
That's all within your control. It's the same thing as being in a relationship.
I'm sitting in the back of a taxi with a senior Apple executive, sort of employee number 12 kind of guy, and I decide to stir the pot.
There's no difference.
And I turn to him and I say,
At the end
I
of the day,
spoke at a Microsoft summit.
becoming a leader
and
is
they
about a
gave me
transition.
their new Zune,
And everybody
I have
has
to
go
tell
through it if
you,
you want to become a leader.
it is so much better.
As an aside, I will
than
say,
your iPod Touch.
leadership is like parenting in the sense that everybody
And he
has the
turned to me and
capacity
said,
to be a parent.
I have no doubt.
That doesn't mean everybody wants to,
Conversation over.
and that doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. Everyone has the capacity to be a leader.
Because the
It doesn't mean
infinite
everybody
player
wants to be a
isn't
leader, and it doesn't mean
playing
everybody should be a leader.
to be number
and the
one
reason is it comes
every
with
day
massive,
with every
massive
product.
responsibility.
They're playing to
Sometimes
outlast.
people,
If I
it's a
said
lifestyle they
Microsoft,
choose
oh, I've
not
got
to
the
have,
new
that's
iPod Touch,
fine.
it's so much better
That's
than your new
absolutely
Zune,
fine.
they would have said,
But
can we
if
see it? What does it
someone
do?
chooses
How, we have to see it.
That is
Because one is obsessed with their competition, the other is obsessed with why they do what
then
they
they
do, the
have to
other is
acknowledge
obsessed with
that they will
where
or
they're
need
going.
to go through a transition.
And the reason Apple
When we're
frustrates
very,
their
very
competition
junior,
is
the
because
only thing we have
secretly,
to do is be good
they're
at
not
our
even
jobs.
competing against
That's
them.
it. Right?
They're
Some
competing
people go
against
get
themselves.
advanced degrees.
And they
in how to do their
understand
jobs,
that
engineers
sometimes
or
you're a little bit
accountants.
ahead,
And if you're good at your
sometimes
job,
you're a little bit
they'll promote
behind.
you.
And sometimes your
Eventually,
product
you'll
is
get
better,
promoted to a
and
position
sometimes you're
where
not.
now responsible for
But
the
if you
people
wake
who
up
do the
every
job
single
you
morning
used to do,
and
but nobody
compete
teaches us
against
how to do
yourself,
that.
how do I make our
just
products better
expect
than
them
they
to be
were
good at
yesterday?
leadership,
How do I take
right?
care of our
It's as if we
customers
put
better than
somebody
we
in
did
front of a
yesterday?
machine and
How do
demand
we
the results,
advance
but never
our
show them
cause
how to
more
use the machine?
efficiently, more
And
productively
so the reason we get
than we
managers,
did
the reason we
yesterday?
get
How do we find
micromanagers, the reason
solutions
we
to
add
advance
leaders
our calling, our
is
cause, our
because
purpose, our
nobody
belief,
showed them
our
how to do the
why
job
every
of
single
leadership, for
day?
one.
What
And
it is
two,
over
can't
time.
help themselves. Of course they're going to
You
tell
will
you to do it
probably
their way because they
be
actually
ahead
do
more
know how to
often.
do it better than you because that's
Those
what
who
got
play
them
the
the
infinite game
promotion in the first
understand
place.
it's not about the
And
battle.
the transition we
it's
have to
about the
make
war.
is that we are no
And they
longer
don't play
responsible for
to
the
win
job.
every day.
Like, as I said before,
And they
we now
frustrate their
become responsible
competition
for the
until their
people who are
competition
responsible for the job.
drops out of the
Right?
game. Every
There's
single
not
bankruptcy,
a
almost every
manager
merger and
around who's
acquisition
responsible for
is
the results.
basically a
We're
company
responsible for
saying
the
we
people
no
who are
longer have the
responsible
will
for
or the
results.
resources to
I love
continue to
talking to
play,
CEOs,
and we have
I'm
no
like,
choice to either
"What's your
drop out of the
priority?"
game
They say, "My
or
priority is my customer."
merge our
Like,
resources with
"Talk to
another
customer
player
10
so that
years
we can stay in the game."
You know,
That's
you
what
have
that
no
is.
impact.
And if you
on
think
a
about the number of
customer
bankruptcies
at
and
all.
mergers and acquisitions,
What you
it's
can
kind
do
of proof
is screw
that
with
most
someone's
companies
life,
don't even know
who
the
will then
game they're
impact your
in.
customer,
You wanna
or
be a great
support
leader,
someone
start with empathy.
who will then impact
You
your
want to
customer.
be a great leader, change your
Right?
perspective.
Leaders are responsible
Play
for the
the game
people,
you're
who are responsible
actually
for the
playing.
people, who are responsible for the people, who are
very
responsible
much.
for the customer. Get that chain right. That is the chain of command. Get that chain right, and everything goes just fine. Get that chain wrong, and then the people who are touching the customer, inventing the product, selling the product, figuring out ways how to build the company, manage the numbers, manage the processes, manage the operations. In other words, all the heavy lifting. Get that chain wrong, and those people will spend more time protecting themselves from you than doing their job. Right? Any company, for example, where it is standard practice in that company for employees to feel the need to send a CYA email after every decision they make, is a sign that they're taking time away from any company where it is standard practice for people to feel the need to keep a folder of all the good things they've done in their careers just in case they need it, you know?
So
is
I'm
a sign that they're taking time and energy out of their day away from doing their job
I have a career.
in order to protect themselves from their own leaders.
I
That's
talk
what that
about
is.
things like
Those are
trust
signs
and
of
cooperation,
bad leadership.
and there
Politics,
should be no
gossip.
demand for my
All
work.
of these things are people acting out
But
of
the fact of the
self-interest.
matter
That's what
is there
politics and
is
gossip
demand for my work,
Right? In
which means
well-led
that there's an
organizations, you tend
opportunity.
to find
It
very
means
little
that
politics
trust and
and very
cooperation
little
are
gossip.
not yet
We're
standard in our
competing at that
organizations,
level.
and yet they
We're now
should be,
working
and we
together
know
with
that,
people
which is why we're looking for ways
at a much
to
higher
bring
level.
those things to
I'll tell
our
you one quick story.
organizations.
It's a true story.
So I thought I would do something a little different today. You know, when you're speaking to tens of thousands of people and you have the opportunity to share a message, of course, most rational people would say, let's go with something I've talked about lots of times and I'm really good at, but I'm
And I had an
not
experience
normal,
with
so I'm
a
going to
young
do something
man by the
completely
name
new,
of
and
known as
I
a
hope this
barista
works out.
in the coffee shop that they
There are
had
two
this
things that
year
I
in
think
Boston.
that great leaders need to
And I was
have.
buying a cup of coffee, and
Empathy and
Noah was
perspective.
charming,
And I think these things are very often
engaging.
forgotten.
And
Leaders
I
are
think
so
I
often
gave
so
100%
concerned about their
my
status
$5
or their
coffee, I
position in
gave
an
$5.
organization, they
And this
actually
guy was
forget their
great.
real job.
I loved
And the
talking to
real
him.
job of a leader
He was
is not about
joy.
being in
And I asked him,
charge,
"Do you
it's
like
about
it?"
taking care of
He said
those
to me, "I
in
love
our
it about
charge."
skipping it.
And I don't think people
And I asked,
realize this,
"What
and
is
I
it
don't
that
think people
Four
train for
Seasons
this.
is doing?
When we're
You love your
junior,
job so much?"
our only responsibility
He says,
is to be good at our
"Without
jobs.
skipping
That's
a beat."
all we really have to
He
do.
says, "Throughout
And
the
some
day,
people actually go get
managers will walk
advanced
past and
educations
ask how I'm doing,
so that they can be really good at their jobs,
He says, "Not just
accountants
my
or whatever, right? And you show up and
He
you
says, "I
work
feel
hard,
supported."
and the
He
company
says,
will give
quote,
us
"I can
tons
be
and
myself."
tons of training
Right?
how to do our
Many
jobs. They'll show us how to use the software. They'll send us away for a few days to get trained in whatever it is that we're doing for the company. And then they expect us to go be good at our jobs. And that's what we do. We work very hard. And if you're good at your job,
when I go to work at Caesar's Palace,
they'll promote you.
Just under the radar.
And at some point, you'll get promoted to a position where we're now responsible for the people who do the job we used to do, but nobody shows us how to do that. And that's why we get managers and not leaders. Because the reason our managers are micromanaging us is because they actually do know how to do the job better than us. That's what got them promoted. Really what we have to do is go through a transition. Some people make it quickly, some people make it slowly, and unfortunately some people will never make that transition at all. Which is we have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. And leadership is a skill like any other. It's a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice all the days, you will get good at it and you will become a strong leader. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent. And doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader. And it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice.
And so I get
Remember,
this question a lot,
you're not in charge, you're responsible for those in your charge. That means things like when everything goes right, you have to give away all the credit. And when everything goes wrong, you have to take all the responsibility.
Some spectacular leaders who don't have big Steve Jobs visions. They're just not.
It's things like staying late to show somebody what to do. It's things like when something does actually break, when something is wrong, instead of yelling and screaming and taking over, you say, try again. When the overwhelming pressures are not on them, the overwhelming pressures are on us. At the end of the day, great leaders are not responsible for the job. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. They're not even responsible for the results. I love talking to CEOs and say, what's your priority? And they put their hands on their hips all proudly and say, my priority is my customer. I'm like, really? You haven't talked to a customer in 15 years.
To do the right thing for your people is hard. It is thankless.
There's no CEO on the planet responsible for the customer. They're just not. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the customer.
And the next guy will get
I'll tell you a true story. A few months ago, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas. It is a wonderful hotel.
Only the best leaders.
And the reason it's a wonderful hotel is not because of the fancy beds. Any hotel can go and buy a fancy bed. The reason it's a wonderful hotel is because of the people who work there. If you walk past somebody at the Four Seasons and they say hello to you, you get the feeling that they actually wanted to say hello to you. It's not that somebody told them that you have to say hello to all the customers, say hello to all the guests. Right? You actually feel that they care. Now, in their lobby, they have a coffee stand. And one afternoon, I went to buy a cup of coffee, and there was a barista by the name of Noah who was serving me. Noah was fantastic. He was friendly and fun, and he was engaging with me, and I had so much fun buying a cup of coffee, I actually think I gave 100% tip, right? He was wonderful. So as is my nature, I asked Noah, do you like your job? Without skipping a beat, Noah says, I love it. And so I followed up. I said, what is it that the Four Seasons is doing that would make you say to me, I love my job? And without skipping a beat, Noah said, throughout the day, managers will walk past me and ask me how I'm doing, if there's anything that I need to do my job better. He said, not just my manager, any manager. And then he said something magical. He says, I also work at Caesar's Palace. And at Caesar's Palace, the managers are trying to make sure we're doing everything right. They catch us when we do things wrong.
I love you.
He says, when I go to work there, I like to keep my head under the radar and just get through the day so I can get my paycheck. He says, here at the Four Seasons, I feel I can be myself. Same person, entirely a different experience from the customer who will engage with Noah. So we in leadership are always criticizing the people. We're always saying, we've got to get the right people on the bus. I've got to fill my team. I've got to get the right people. But the reality is, it's not the people. It's the leadership. If we create the right environment, we will get people like Noah at the Four Seasons. If we create the wrong environment, we will get people like Noah at Caesar's palace. It's not the people. And yet we're so quick to hire and fire. You can't hire and fire your children. If your kids are struggling, we don't say, you got to see at school, you're up for adoption.
Being vulnerable doesn't mean...
So why is it that when somebody has performance problems at work, why is it that our instinct is to say, you're out?
To say, I need help.
We do not practice empathy.
Is the willingness
what does empathy look like? Here's the lack of empathy. This is normal in our business world. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into our office and says, your numbers have been for the third quarter in a row. You have to pick up your numbers, otherwise I can't guarantee what the future will look like. How inspired do you think that person is to come to work the next day? Here's what empathy looks like. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into your office and says, your numbers are down for the third quarter in a row. Are you okay?
Lying, hiding, and faking is
I'm worried about
a much better option.
What's going on?
Right?
We all have performance
but for the fact
issues.
That it's more
maybe
stressful
someone's
and
kid is sick. Maybe they're having
falter,
problems in their marriage.
Right?
Maybe one of their parents is dying.
But
we don't know
what
what's going on in their lives. And of course it will affect performance at work. Empathy is being concerned about the human being, not just their output.
That is okay with you. Being vulnerable.
And we have to practice
Nobody's
empathy.
thinking, oh my God.
And one of the groups that we are pretty bad at practicing empathy with are young millennials. So let me show you what empathy looks like.
What people are thinking.
Listening to understand, trying to understand someone's point of view and disposition.
But generally, that's not what people are thinking.
At 100% of talks that I give or the meetings that I have, invariably, someone will raise their hand and ask about the millennial problem.
Like say they screwed up, like say they need help.
Apparently, this young generation is unleadable. Apparently, they have confounded every single company in every single industry. And so now it's at the point where companies have given up and are now just asking millennials, what do you want? And so they say, we want free food and bean bags. And so now every company has free food and bean bags, and guess what? Nothing has changed. So what I thought we would do, is show you what empathy looks like. How do we practice empathy with someone we don't understand? How do we practice empathy with an organization or a group that we're struggling with? Right? So we have to understand that it breaks down to four things.
Everybody talks about the importance of culture.
I've broken it down into parenting,
I've never met a CEO in my
technology,
who doesn't think
impatience,
people are important.
And environment.
Every day they're making decisions.
Let's talk about parenting
prioritize
first.
A number over a person.
Too many millennials have grown up
they make decisions that literally
subject to what has been described as a failed parenting strategy.
Ultra speedy.
Too many of them were told as they were growing up that they were special, that they can have whatever they want just because they want it. They got medals for coming in last. They got participation medals. Right? And the science on this is already good. We know that it devalues the feeling that somebody who works hard and comes in first place, and it actually makes the person who comes in last embarrassed because they know they don't deserve it. So it actually makes them feel worse. It actually doesn't help. There are a lot of kids who got into honors classes, not because they deserved it, but because their parents complained. And they got A's not because they earned them, but because the teachers didn't want to deal with the parents. Right?
Do you love your wife?
Then those kids graduate and they start a job. And in an instant, they find out that they're not special.
Right?
That you don't get anything just because you want it.
Right?
You get nothing for coming in last, and your parents cannot help you get a promotion.
It's an impossible question, right?
And in an instant, their entire self-image is completely shattered. In an instant, the way they see themselves has completely changed, turned on its head.
It's about transition.
And so what you find is that there's an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations.
And
remember, they have grown up in an Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat world in which they are very, very good at putting filters on everything. They're very, very good at curating how they want to be seen.
So clearly there's no results.
And we think they're full of confidence. They seem to have all the answers. They seem to be telling us what to do.
Or
at the end of the day, it's just not there. It's just not true. It's just not true. Their confidence is a lot weaker than before. They don't know where they're coming from. They don't know where they're going. They're unsure of themselves. And they lack the courage to ask. We say things like, my door is always open, assuming that they have the courage to walk through the door.
Screw it up. You can eat cake one day.
Then we add in
skip a day or
technology.
two.
There's a chemical in our body called dopamine.
But if you stick with
dopamine is responsible for the feelings we get when we find something we're looking for or we accomplish something we set out to accomplish. You know that great feeling you get when you cross something off your to-do list, or when you win the game, when you hit the target, right? Win the client, get the promotion, whatever it is. That elation, find your keys.
You have to brush your teeth every day for 2 minutes. What does brushing your teeth twice a day for 2 minutes do? Nothing.
That elation comes from a chemical in our body called dopamine. Right? Now, other substances, other things that release dopamine include alcohol, nicotine, gambling. That's what makes us feel good when we engage with those things, and it's the root of a lot of addiction. In fact, almost every alcoholic on the planet discovered alcohol when they were you see, very, very young, the only approval we need is approval from our parents. And then as we go through adolescence, we now crave the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the larger tribe. Very, very important, right? It's a time of high stress and high anxiety. And we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and the numbing effects of dopamine to help them the stress, and that becomes hardwired. And then for the rest of their lives, when they suffer some kind of extreme stress, they don't turn to a person, they turn to the bottle. Right?
I can't tell you
we also know that dopamine is released with cell phones and social media. So that bing, buzz, flash, and beep that we get from our phones that feels so good, it releases dopamine. We like getting it. Yes, we all hate all the emails, but we love the bing.
There's no thing I can tell you have to
we've all been in this position. You're feeling a little bit down, you're feeling a little bit sorry, maybe feeling a little bit sad. So what do? We send out 10 texts to 10 friends. Hi, 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 hi. And we hope that they write back because it feels good.
People will look at little
right?
things that are
so now we have a young generation with basically unfettered access to social media and cell phones. We have age restrictions on alcohol, we have age restrictions on smoking, and we have age restrictions on gambling. We have no age restrictions on this other dopamine-producing device called social media or cell phones. It's the equivalent of throwing open the liquor cabinet and telling our young adolescents, I know this is a stressful time, try the vodka, it'll get you through these hard times. That's basically what we're doing. And so what's happening is it's becoming hardwired, where our young generation isn't learning the coping skills and coping mechanisms to turn to another human being when they're struggling or stressed. They're turning to social media or their cell phones. Their self-worth sometimes becomes wrapped up in how many likes they get. They obsessively check how many likes, and actually will get depressed if they don't get any. You see them going out with their friends, and instead of connecting with their friends,
colleagues and coworkers,
they will simply sit and talk on the phone. Let me show you something that's really powerful. Can I borrow your phone, please? There's one right there in between you. Just let me borrow that for a sec. I'm asking you to give me somebody else's phone. You don't have to turn it on. I just need it.
Brothers.
Thank you. So let me show you the subconscious power of this device. What if I were to hold my phone while I'm giving this presentation? I'm not checking it, it's not buzzing, it's not beeping. I'm simply holding. Do you feel like you're the most important thing to me right now? No, you do not. And this is an artificial environment. Now think about how often this phone is out while we're talking to other people. Hey boss, can I talk to you? Sure, what's on your mind? As opposed to, sure, what's on your mind? We go out for dinner or lunch with our family and our friends. We have meetings, and we put the phone on the table, which sends a subconscious message to everybody else in the room that this is not that important to me. You're not that important to me. And by the way, putting your phone upside down is not more polite. This is my favorite one, where the phone rings in the middle of a dinner, in the middle of a lunch, in the middle of a meeting, and somebody goes, I'm not going to answer it. Oh my God, just so magnanimous.
And unbelievably hard.
Right? Thank you.
And it isn't.
Right? Put it away, keep it away, because what it does is it hurts our ability to relate to each other. Now you look at young kids these days, they're on them all the time. I don't blame them. It is addiction. We yell and scream at them, but it's like yelling and screaming at an alcoholic. It doesn't help the fact that it's a chemical addiction. Right? So you take an insecure generation that now, through no fault of their own,
right?
struggles to cope with stress. They don't know how to cope with and deal with stress. As they have told me, many of them will admit that they struggle to form deep, meaningful relationships. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial.
Over the long term,
Right? That their friends they know would cancel on them if they get a better plan, that they wouldn't really know who to talk to if they get depressed. And maybe they'll turn to an online support group, which is not a real thing. It's not human.
If you had to go to the gym for 6 months,
and we've seen the impact of this. We're starting to see rises of depression in this generation. We're starting to see a rise of suicide in this generation. We're starting to see a rise of accidental death due to drug overdose from this generation. Universities are currently dealing with an epidemic that they've never dealt with before, which is the number of kids requesting leaves of absence due to depression. Right? Now, those are all extreme examples. The less extreme and more likely example is that someone will go through life just never finding joy or fulfillment. And everything's just fine. How's your job? It's fine. How are your friends? You know, they're fine. But no joy, because you just cannot. Because joy, fulfillment comes from this. It comes from human interaction. We are social animals and we need it. And we have to learn to rely on our friends. And that skill is desperately lacking.
I couldn't have a very effective relationship with my wife.
So you add in the next one. This generation is often accused of being entitled. And if you've worked with any of them before, sure seems that way. But I would argue that we're misreading the tea leaves. They're not entitled. They're impatient. Again, back to empathy. How did they grow up? They grew up in a world of instant gratification. You want to buy something, you go on Amazon, it shows up the next day. You want to watch a movie, you don't check movie times, you just log on and download it whenever you want to watch it. Stream it, right? You want to watch a TV show, you don't wait week to week to week. You just binge watch for the weekend. In fact, if you want to get hold of somebody, you don't leave a message on their machine and wait 4 hours for them to get the message back. You just text them and they'll call you, they'll get back to you literally instantaneously. Heck, if you want to go on a date, you don't even have to be like, hey, swipe right. You got
to know, because there's so many paths, right? And you could nudge sort of one way or
never
the
learn
other
the skill set of like,
create something.
What are you doing, right?
And maybe it's as simple as, here's what I'm.
You can have 4 dates in a night.
The amount of laughter.
In other words, everything comes instantaneously. They have falsely applied the instant gratification model to life fulfillment and career fulfillment. They want it all instantaneously. The problem is life, relationships, career are not destinations. Like, look, I found the job I love. That's not how it works. It's not a scavenger hunt. I'm looking for the job that will. No, it doesn't work that way. It's a journey. It's the same with love. It's like, I found love. No, you didn't. You work hard every single day to stay in love. It's a journey. It's as if they're standing at the foot of a mountain. They know exactly what they want. They can see the summit. What they don't see is the mountain. I talked to some recent college grads who are in their entry-level jobs on a regular basis, and I'll ask them things like, how's it going? And they'll say, yeah, I think I'm going to quit. I'm like, why? They're like, I'm not making an impact. I'm like, you've been here 8 months, right? And this is the problem. They see it as destination. I'm not making an impact. I hear it all the time. But they don't even know what that means, impact. Yes, we all want to make an impact. What kind of impact? What do you want to do? How do you want to contribute to the world? This is what vision is. This is what why is.